This is Robert Stearns. Hey, I want to thank you for tuning in. I really believe that learning is one of the greatest joys in life. And one of the greatest ways to learn is simply to have meaningful conversations, both with those who come from a similar background as yours, as well as those whose background might be very different. So my hope is that as we connect and converse with leaders from all around the world, that we will learn and grow together. If you're new with us, hit the subscribe button and we'll deliver the new episodes to you right away. So wherever you are, on a run, in the car, at the kitchen table with some coffee, welcome to the conversation. And welcome indeed. It is Thursday night, and here we are. Shalom, bruchim habayim. Welcome, everyone, lovers of the Word of God, lovers of the Jewish roots of our Christian faith, lovers of Israel, lovers of learning. God bless you from wherever you are, however you came upon us tonight. Our room is filling up. Joseph is here from Katy, Texas. Deborah's here from Newark, New Jersey. Carol is here from Round Rock, Texas. Laverne is here from New York City. Terry Leogal is here from Columbus, Indiana. It was great to see you in town this week, Terry, and I know you're coming back for East Coast Conference next month. Anaheim, California is here with the ever-faithful Diana Hogue. And June is with us from Bolingbrook, Illinois. Denise is here from Midland, Pennsylvania. By the way, I'm preaching this Sunday in Telford, Pennsylvania at Hopewell Church in Telford, Pennsylvania. I'm honored to be the guest preacher there this weekend. So if you are in the Pennsylvania area, and I think Telford is kind of near the Delaware border, I don't think it's too far, come and see us. Jennifer is with us from Lancaster. Rebecca from Buffalo, New York. Sonia, God bless you, Sonia. Trisha Miller from the great Camera organization, the great Jewish organization Camera, is with us through Dr. Trisha Miller in Boston. Catalina's here from Pittsburgh. David Krause, Boyertown, Pennsylvania. Janice Kemp, Fort Myers, Florida. Fran Zam, that's the coolest name ever. Fran Zam is here from Jersey. Michelle Wisaki from Orchard Park. Patty, good to see you here. Kristen, good to see you here. Folks, sign in your name. Tell us where you're watching from. You've got one job that you've got to accomplish within the next 60 seconds. You have to hit the share button. Everybody share. Share the good news. Baltimore is in the house. Daniela is in the house. Special shout out to Daniela. She coordinates our German office. Our work is growing in Germany, and we're so grateful to Daniela, who is a renowned, very, very well-known television journalist in Germany. And we're so grateful that she coordinates all of our work there. Super happy to have you with us tonight. A couple quick announcements before we dive into things. East Coast Conference is next month, July 8 through 11, right here in God's country, Buffalo, New York. We've got some amazing guests. Jose Diaz will be with us. Craig Pridgeon will be with us all the way from Jerusalem. Dubi Sabo. Does everybody remember? Wonderful. Dubi Sabo. Wasn't he with us? In November he was with us. In the middle of COVID? He was with us in the middle of COVID. He's an amazing guy. He's been a guide in Israel for years and years. He was the Israeli representative, he might still be, of Kim Clement's ministry. Our brother Kim Clement, who was such a blessing. Of course, he's with the Lord now. But Dubi will be with us in July at the conference. Resting Place will be with us. We just confirmed Joshua Lively. So if you enjoyed Joshua Lively last weekend at the conference, he'll be back with us. So join us July 8 through 11. You need to register right away because that registration is going to close very soon. So please do that quickly. It is not too late to join me in Israel. We're going back September the 27th. It's a new government, by the way, in Israel this week. For the first time in 12 years, Prime Minister Netanyahu is no longer I don't know if he's still currently in power. We can ask our guest in a moment. But I know a new government has been voted in. I don't know what that process is. Actually, the new president has been confirmed, who was a dear friend of mine, Bougie Herzog, Isaac Herzog. I knew him probably a decade ago when I helped to form the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus under the leadership of the amazing Dr. Yuri Stern, who was one of the Knesset members, as well as Rabbi Benny Olon. Bougie Herzog at that point was, and actually it's interesting, not only was Isaac Herzog part of our initial committee, but also Reuben Rivlin. And both of them have now become presidents of the state of Israel. And I saw President Rivlin about a year and a half ago when I was there. Wonderful, wonderful man. What a heart. It's so rare to find a politician who has just a wonderful, warm, beautiful heart. And President Rivlin certainly was that. And we wish Isaac Herzog, the new President Herzog, all of our prayers and support. So join me in Israel. It is not too late. Go to awakejerusalem.com and you can join those who've already registered. We cannot wait to be back there. Tomorrow night, we will have Shabbat. We'll do the brachot, the Shabbat blessings at 6 p.m. as we do every week. Delaware is in the house. Hello, Delaware. Great to have you here. Keep signing in, everybody. Keep hitting the share button. Help us get the word out here. And hit the subscribe button on YouTube. That will really be a help to us. Also, please follow me on social media. If you're not, go right now to the various social media channels, Instagram and Facebook. Go to my public figure page. My private page is full, but it's Robert R. Stearns at Instagram, Robert R. Stearns public figure at Facebook, and YouTube /Robert Stearns on YouTube. What's that bottom one? Just at Robert Stearns. Oh, I guess that's Twitter. So anyway, all right. Is that it for announcements? Sunday, I said I'll be in Telford. The amazing Pastor Joe Green, who is such a blessing to us. Hello, Natalie Newman from Grand Island. Did you all know that before the state of Israel was created, there was discussion of Grand Island being the homeland for the Jewish people? This is an unknown fact of history, but it's true. Our Holy Land trips would have been so much shorter if we just had to go to Grand Island, New York. Natalie, welcome you and Jim home from Mexico. You guys were there on vacation last week. That was fantastic. What a great crowd we've got tonight in the house. And so hit the share button, folks, and get the word out. All right. I am always so blessed to make a new friend. What a joy to have the opportunity to meet new people and to see the world through new eyes, to hear truth from a new voice, to encounter a fellow spiritual pilgrim, someone who's on a spiritual journey. I just love it. I just absolutely love it. And our dear friend Mark Gerson has introduced us to several wonderful rabbis, and tonight is no exception. Our rabbi tonight was born in Brooklyn, New York, and lived there for many years before moving to Israel. He served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and then studied to be a rabbi, and ended up through the journey of faith, moving to Toronto, Canada, and he currently serves the Jewish community in Toronto. He's a former past president, or I guess you can't be a former past president. He's a past president, a former past president of the Toronto Board of Rabbis. He's very involved in interfaith dialogue with both Christian and Muslim groups, which is so very, very important. He has a beautiful wife, 4 beautiful children, and we're thrilled tonight to welcome to Bishop and the Rabbi, Rabbi Aaron Flanzraich. Rabbi, welcome. We're honored that you're here.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you and that remarkable roll call of guests from all over North America and perhaps all over the world. A few interesting points of connection, Robert.
Yeah.
I have a adjunct teaching position in Berlin. There's a rabbinical seminary in Berlin that has a remarkable history to it, and I would very much like to make the acquaintance of your contact there.
Absolutely. Yeah, Daniello, Eagles Wings, we've been a Verein. We've been an authorized nonprofit in Germany for probably about a decade.
Wow.
About 5 of my books are translated into German, and usually I do one speaking tour a year through Germany.
Fantastic.
And so we would be thrilled to make the shidduch between yourself and all that. And it's always wonderful, the points of connection.
Indeed, indeed.
Rabbi, let me ask you a question before we dive into the Parsha tonight. Well, first of all, can you tell us how does it work? I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't know. Because of course the parliamentary system is so different than the American system. Is Naftali Bennett now automatically the new prime minister, or is there a process that goes and a date that's set in place?
There's definitely a process. There has to be a series. So the steps are, as I understand it, is the government they have to call the Knesset into sitting. They need to have a confidence vote in the new government, and it just needs to be not a parliamentary majority. In other words, there are 120 seats in the Knesset. They don't need 61. They just need a sitting majority. So if there's 10 people in the room, they need 6 of them to say yes. And then the swearing in goes in. And then they're the sitting, then he's the sitting prime minister.
And when do we anticipate that will happen?
It sounds like it's going to be early next week from what I've been reading.
Okay. And the 2 primary figures then in the new government will be, as I understand it, Naftali Bennett will be the prime minister?
Yes, they have a rotation agreement. It's probably important to point out that the kingmaker in all of this ends up being, maybe in hindsight, Robert, when the history of this period is written, Israel's most generous and remarkable politician might end up being Yair Lapid. Bennett only got 7 mandates in the most recent election. Lapid, I think, got 17 or 18. And yet he turned the first year and a half of the prime ministerial role over to Naftali Bennett. Just to get the government put into place. Now, Yair Lapid's history is also fascinating. His father was a long-serving politician in Israel. He was also a ministerial position holder. His name was Tomi Lapid, and he was a survivor of the Holocaust. And I would urge all the people listening tonight to go to YouTube after they subscribe to your page. Go to YouTube and type in Yair Lapid, Y-A-I-R, Lapid, L-A-P-I-D, speech, Hungary. And if you're not crying 7 minutes into that speech, you probably should go to a hospital and have your heart checked, because it is like a punch in the face.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it's a new era. Prime Minister Netanyahu has led Israel courageously and capably for many years. But it's clear that change has come. And so when we go in September, it'll be a new administration. And as always, our prayers and our support are with the government of Israel. It's also very interesting to note that for the first time, as I understand it, and again, please correct me, but as I understand it, this is the first time that an Arab party, there are a few different Arab parties that are in the Knesset, but a first time that one has become part of the ruling coalition. So they are now part of the coalition that has formed the government. Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely. And so much for Israel being an apartheid state.
Well, Rabbi, this is the thing that I just absolutely want us to focus on, folks. This is the ludicrousness of accusing Israel of being an apartheid state. And here yet is another. There are so many examples, but here yet another milestone, another example of Israel's integration of its Arab minority into the warp and woof of its culture. Does racism exist in Israel? Absolutely. Guess what? Racism exists all over the world. And any place you find humans, you're going to find racism. But that is a far different thing than apartheid being officially the sanctioned modus operandi of the government. So, all right, enough for the politics for the moment. Rabbi, one question before we jump in and welcome. We're welcoming Tennessee here tonight. Joe Green is on from Tennessee. Keep typing in, folks. I see the room is growing. Hit the share button. Keep typing in where you're watching from. If you're a first timer, let us know that you're a first timer. Rabbi, I'm always interested. How did you feel the call to be a rabbi? How did you feel this drawing to give your life towards the service of God and of his people?
It's a beautiful question. Rabbis generally, we sadly don't talk in those terms. And I think there's something lacking in perhaps in some of our internal conversations about how rabbis end up in the positions that they are. But I'll share with you, my father was born in Germany, and my grandmother, of blessed memory, who was a remarkable woman, was the one who in 1936 forced my grandfather and my one-year-old father to get on a boat out of Breslau to head to New York. And many, many years later, after I was sworn in to my unit in the Israeli army, my grandmother was at the swearing-in ceremony in Jerusalem. And I walked her back to her hotel because afterwards I was going to go out with my buddies and get drunk. And I brought her to the hotel, and she looked at me and she started crying, and she said, if someone had told me as I was running on a boat to save what I thought was going to be my family's life, that my grandson would be wearing a uniform for a Jewish country, I would have spit in their face. And she said to me, Aaron, you're not just a Jew. You are an Israeli.
Wow.
And you have nothing to be afraid of. So I think that I always had a little bit of rattling inside of me. But that really took it to a new level. And I was determined, despite whatever distractions that may have come my way, I was always determined on some level to serve my people. I think that this is a people that is worthy of having its message heard by the people themselves, and wherever else in the world that I find willing hearts and open ears of people who also feel a stirring about important messages.
You've got us crying, and it's not even 9:15 yet, or I guess it is 9:15, but incredible. What a story. And I think people forget, first of all, how recent the Shoah was, and how, what's the scripture? When the Lord turned back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. For Israel to go from the Holocaust to the rebirth of the state, and the state blossoming as a rose within one generation is literally, it's the epic story of all epic stories. It's biblical in its proportion, and it's overwhelming. And thank you for giving us yet another glimpse into the facet, right? It's a diamond with so many facets. It's just another beautiful, shining example of the faithfulness of Hashem to his word, the tenacity, the perseverance of the Jewish people. And it's beautiful. And that perseverance is due in no small part to your commitment to Torah, your commitment to the word of God. And so, folks, tonight our parsha is Shalach, and we find this in Numbers chapter 13 through 16, all right? To be technical, 15:41. But Numbers chapter 13 through chapter 15 and verse 41. And it's just a great parsha with all kinds of things going on in here. Some of the real interesting early moments of Moses and the children of Israel making foray into the land of Canaan. So, Rabbi, take us on a walk, take us on a journey into Parsha Shalach tonight.
Thank you so much. One of the remarkable things about biblical studies and the Torah is that there's There's like a micro perspective of it, and then there's a macro perspective of it. It's the difference between zooming in on your Google map and then pulling out and seeing the big thing. So Robert, what I would love to do is that the story that we're reading this week, the Parshat of Shalach, is not the only story about spies in the Bible. We know, for example, that in the second chapter of Joshua, Joshua sends spies himself to go to the land. Now, your listeners will probably know and remember that of the 12 spies that Moses sent out to reconnoiter the land, to see, as the Torah tells, in Hitofi, if she's good or if it's bad or whatever it is, to come back with a report on the land, one of those 12 spies, one from each tribe, one of them happened to have been Joshua himself. And so now we go 40 years later. And of course, the damning report that they bring and the calamity that falls on the people. And they're condemned now because they brought this evil report back and the people believed it, that the land wasn't good, that God's promise wasn't a real promise, and that they're condemned now to wander the desert for 40 years, and that only a new generation would be able to go into the promised land and to fulfill the vision, the promise that God had shared with Abraham. And so it's remarkable that Joshua does the exact same thing. He sends spies. Mm-hmm. And so for us to ask, what is different between Joshua and Moses?
Now, Rabbi, can I just ask for folks, because it's interesting you're saying this, because one of our folks pointed this out to me the other week.
Oh.
Do you have, and forgive me for putting you on the spot, but do you know the reference for the other spy story? Okay, yes, great. What?
Absolutely. It's the book of Joshua, chapter 2.
Okay, Joshua 2.
It's
very
all
good.
It's a tiny chapter. It's a tiny chapter. And there's lots of fascinating threads. And that's one of the questions that emerges. Moses sends, according to the story that we read in the Torah, Moses sends out 12 spies, as I said, one from each tribe. Joshua doesn't send out 12. Joshua sends out 2. And what they encounter and what they come back with is fascinating, because the people in the story with Moses, these spies come back, 10 of the 12 come back, as I said, with this damning report. What do they say? They go, oh yeah, the land is great. And it's got like, huge fruits, like the pineapples the size of my car and the whole thing. But those people who live there, they're like B'nai Anakim, they're like huge people. Hanephilim, they're like these mythical monsters that fill the earth. We can't take that place. And then they go even further to say, Robert, the language is like provocative. What do they say? Ha'aretz ochelet et yoshveha. That the land eats its inhabitants, meaning not like in the regular world, like after the Garden of Eden, where they were commanded that you'll draw your food out of the land. In other words, we eat the land. But they come with this horrific picture that the land eats the people on it. Mm-hmm. And they go, there's no way we can do this. There's no way. Now, of course, of those 12, 2 of them, one of them being Joshua, the second one being Caleb, they go, whoa. That's not what we saw. That is not true. And on some level, the story has a deeper impact when we look at the second chapter of Joshua. Because the 2 spies, not the 10, the 2 spies, see, Joshua learned something. Only 2 now. And they don't even walk around the country. They don't even go into the city of Jericho. What do? They go speak to Rahab, to Rahab.
Right. The incredible story of Rahab, who ends up, if I'm not incorrect, ends up in the lineage. She becomes part of the story here, and so the rabbi's bringing us over, everybody, to Joshua chapter 2. Rabbi, just before we get there, and I don't want to interrupt your flow, but we've got a question from Tennessee that and this actually came originally from something Mark Gerson said, that there's some evidence that Caleb was not Jewish, but was part of the mixed multitude that came out with Egypt, the God-fearers who saw that the hand of God, the power of God was on the Jewish people. And so that Caleb joined himself to the Jewish people. Do you subscribe to that view?
I mean, it's interesting. His name is not necessarily a Semitic name, the ones that you see with the other names. And also his father's name in Hebrew, Yefuneh, the one who turns. It
Wow.
seems to be suggestive of some change in his life.
Mm-hmm.
He's the product of someone who went through change.
And of course, for us, this is just such a beautiful reminder of these moments in sacred history where Jew and Gentile come together in a beautiful way in the story that God is telling in the world. Moses and Jethro, Ruth and Naomi, and on and on and on it goes. And so interesting that Caleb very well may have been part of that mixed multitude. And so that the two spies who brought back the good report, and Rabbi, I've got a sermon I preach called the Two Spies Club. You always want to be a part of the two spies. You want to be a part of the two.
Oh, that's so cool.
You want to bring back the good report. But that might have been a Jew and a Gentile bringing back the positive report, the good report about the land. So Joshua learns from this. The rabbi's teaching us, everybody. And now he's getting ready to send spies out. And we're in Joshua now, chapter 2. And pick it up for us there, Rabbi.
Right. And they go to Rahab. In Hebrew, her name is Rachav. And they go to Rahab. And so once again, Robert, these spies this is not James Bond. They're not like setting drones up in the sky. They're not like hiding in bushes and caves, doing topography studies, figuring out like the size of the armies, the heights of the walls of Jericho, the width of the walls, the amount of people live, nothing. They go to Rahab, and what does Rahab tell them? Rahab tells them, the people of this country, of Canaan, heard that you, meaning the children of Israel, are coming to the land, and their hearts have melted, and they are frightened, and they are on the run. In other words, when you look at this story, that the Israelites, the way they were in the time of Moses, is now what the Canaanites are.
Wow.
The Israelites leave Egypt and they come to Canaan, and all they see is these mythological things to be afraid of. And now under Joshua, the Israelites show up, and it's the Canaanites that are frightened. In other words, Robert, the story of this is that how we see the world, the famous expression is that by the Israeli author Aaron Appelfeld, another Holocaust survivor. Appelfeld famously wrote that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. In other words, that we ask for God to give us faithful eyes and an open heart and a willing mind and strong hands and legs that will carry us. And that we do our part to believe that we can be mythological and conquer places and achieve things. And that is the power that carries us to our promised lands.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so the importance of how we see, Jesus had a beautiful saying. He said, if your eye is light, then your whole body is full of light. If your perception is full of light, your whole being, will be full of light. So powerful.
There's a school of psychological thought called Bashian psychology. And Bashian psychology says that, and we have expressions in English for this, right? When we say that people see red, what are we saying? We're saying that they're so angry, everything is red. In some level, how we are is how we see the world. And one of the things that faith is meant to shape us in, Robert, is
Mm.
to give us the ability to see what the world could be.
Come on, preach. Yes, sir.
I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about this stuff, and it's things that I deeply believe in my, as we'd say, in my kishkets, like in my insides.
Yeah.
Religion is meant to guide us with those kinds of eyes. And I
Rabbi,
think,
how much more important is this? Because I mean, now you're bringing in psychology into this, which I love. I have often said that, you know, if I were actually in charge of anything, you know, if philosophy and psychology and theology and sociology could sit at a table together,
Mm.
what a better world it would be.
Mhm.
If those four disciplines, those four schools,
Yes.
could come together rather than being antagonistic one towards the other, you know, rather than psychology feeling that religion is inherently, you know, whatever, and vice versa. You know, there's antagonism oftentimes
Mm.
between these disciplines. But my point, that was not my point. My point is, because you just said something so profound about the Brachian, I think you said school of, you know, of psychology,
Ashian.
Brachian. How does that work itself out in us when we are controlled by these things that are from the pit of hell? You know, how do we, in other words, we are being bombarded
Mm.
with media messages.
Mhm.
It feels virtually inescapable.
Mm.
If you're going to live in the modern world, your attention is being just so pulled this way and that. And we're all so worried about our children and our grandchildren who are, you know, this is mother's milk to them now.
Yeah.
How do we in a practical way, make it practical for us? In a practical way, how do we tune in to the perspective of God?
It's a great question. So a few things. One of the things that sociology, psychology, theology, and religion all have in common is that they place the human being in the center of the moral drama of the universe. And there is a compelling idea that emerges from that, which that if we were to tell and teach our children that the idea of what their life is, of what their life can be, that their choices are imperatively important, that they have opportunities that lie before them, and that the one thing that stands between them and achieving all those dreams is and this is difficult, but it is the ability and awareness that you must move beyond yourself. The paradox of life is that the more you move out of yourself, the more you actually touch yourself. The paradox of life is the more you care and love for other people, the more love you actually find for yourself.
Beautiful.
The more you stare at your iPhone screen, your iPad screen, your computer, your TV, is moments stolen from you to stop and move beyond yourself, because they're just mirrors, Robert. It's narcissism in its most nth degree, because you search and find what's important to you. But that's not the point of human life. The point of human life is to move beyond what you need, to look and think with others. And that's what your show is doing, Robert. Think about this for a moment. Yes, you talk about Jethro and Moses and about Caleb and Joshua. That's great. But Robert Stearns and Aaron Flanzraich, a bishop and a rabbi, are talking.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving beyond ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And these devices, it's acid to that idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so powerful. I'm thinking of two verses from the Christian scripture that just affirm what you're saying. The Apostle Paul has this beautiful thought where he says, "It is no longer I who live, but Paul would say Mashiach, or the anointed one, or the anointing, the Redeemer, the connection with the consciousness of Christ. It is Christ who lives in me. And the life that I now live, I live by the power of the Ruach, the power of the Spirit. It's a powerful concept that Paul brings us, that the I, which, we could debate in psychological terms, is he talking about the id, the ego, the superego, but certainly that selfish part of us, right? Everyone should have a healthy self-esteem. Everyone should have a healthy ego. But there's very small steps between a healthy ego and narcissism. And so Paul says it is no longer I, it is no longer my, demands that take preeminence. I'm subjugating myself under the Christ. I'm subjugating myself under the laws of God. And of course, for Paul, that was the Jew, Jesus. And so this was not a denial of Torah. This was not a denial of Judaism. Rather, Paul viewed it as the fulfillment of his Judaism. Paul was schooled by Gamliel. Paul understood exactly that. So that verse comes, and there's another verse where it says, Jesus, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising his shame. In other words, the pathos of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, he found the ability to endure that pain because he saw the greater good that would come to humanity. And I think in a very practical example, I think of David Ben-Gurion, you just mentioned earlier, who I am blown away by these early pioneers and what they lived through. And then I think of Dr. Martin Luther King in that last sermon that he gave. He said, I don't know how it'll go with me now, but I've been to the mountaintop. He prophetically knew, that his life had come to an end, but he had laid it down for the greater good. And so this is the call, folks. This is the great call of our generation. And I've Rabbi, I'm sorry, I don't usually talk this much, but you've got me very stirred up tonight. Usually I'm just kind of quiet, but I have said from the pulpit over and over and over again, everything we know about the forces of evil is that, it's rooted in individualism. And whatever your concept of Lucifer, and there's different concepts of Satan and Lucifer in Christianity and Judaism, but whatever that is, he said, I will ascend to the throne. I will become like the Most High. Satan in the garden says to Eve, you'll become like God. There's this constant individualistic thing to try to make ourselves God. And Rabbi is telling us tonight that when we focus on the other, everything changes. And Rabbi, it's a beautiful, beautiful thought and a powerful gift you're giving us.
Thank you so much. I want to, if I may, to take this slightly earlier idea and maybe apply it to something in the headlines of today, and that is the raft of virulent anti-Israel propaganda and the accusations that people have about it being, as we just half, on a half remark, how we said how Israel is accused of being an apartheid state and a war crime state. And just for the record, an old Army friend of mine, he works at the Chief of Staff headquarters in Tel Aviv, and he's a lawyer, and he works in the targeting department, and nothing is ever targeted. Israel's like probably one of the only countries that goes to war with lawyers. Nothing is approved for targeting until the lawyers sign off on it, and they work during campaigns, active campaigns, in a sealed room, meaning that Army personnel, the commanders, are not allowed into the room where the lawyers are, so they're not intimidated at all. Israel is accused of being a war crime entity and a colonial thing and all these other, and you and I both shared an idea when looking at the story of Moses's spies and then Joshua's spies, and we said how we don't see the world as it is, but how we are. And so for us, people who are peace loving, justice pursuing, people who understand that the care and love of human beings is our utmost cause in life,
Mm-hmm.
people who see that, and then you hear people accusing a country that functions as a democracy under the most extreme circumstances. When they say those things about Israel, who are they to see those things? In other words, what is it about them
Mm-hmm.
that makes them see those things? And that is a difficult question to ask, but it's an important one. Rather than try to argue, or in other words, rather than trying to disprove these salacious, ridiculous claims, let's ask the deeper question. What is it in their work, in their makeup, that makes them see those things? Because that's not the Israel that you see, Robert. I know that. And the people who are listening tonight, I know that's not the Israel that they love and believe in. And for sure, it's not the Israel that I adore and love. It's not a perfect place, but no place is perfect. You know, the Garden of Eden was closed off for a reason, because there are no more golden cages. We live in a painful, difficult world. So I think that's one of the other things that emerges from this remarkable story in the Torah portion, about how we see the world and what we're supposed to make of that.
Well, the power of perspective is what we're talking about, the power of how we view things, and just the overwhelming weight of responsibility that lays on the shoulders of media today, where we've got such warped, media has become its own power force rather than reporting. It is, setting the narrative. We could go all night. We're almost out of time, Rabbi. I want us to get to one other question.
Sure.
And it's a tough one. And I'm sorry, I'm being rough on you tonight. You're a first-time guest, and it's like Daniel and I'm giving you all kinds of difficulty. But folks, just tell Rabbi how much we're appreciating him tonight. What a great crowd we've got in tonight, and folks are commenting left and right. Folks, if you're blessed by the broadcast and if you want to stand in support of Israel, please go and join us in our Abraham's Bread outreach. We have 2 feeding centers in Israel, one in Jerusalem and one in Tiberias. We partner there with Mayor Panim. We provide about 700 meals a week to Israelis. We don't ask them, are you Jewish? Are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Are you Druze? Are you Baha'i? We ask them, are you hungry? And if they're hungry, they are given a hot meal. And you can partner with us and be a blessing to Israel through our Abraham's Bread feeding centers, and become a partner with Eagle's Wings. Help us in this work. We have a huge global vision as we continue to bring to the table the message of Jerusalem-based Christianity, not Constantinian Christianity, not Greco-Roman Christianity, but what is Jerusalem-based Christianity? Many of us have faith in Jesus, but we know almost nothing about the faith of Jesus. And how would our lives be informed if we actually understood the worldview of Jesus and the Apostle Paul and the early followers? So you can join the ministry at $18 a month, $36 a month, etc., different levels. In fact, Saturday night, I'm hosting a private dinner for our partners in the Pennsylvania area who are, I think our Watchman Partners dinner is there Saturday night. So you get invited to cool little events and all kinds of different things. If you join, you're going to get your Bishop and the Rabbi coffee mug. There it is, right there, the Bishop. And Rabbi Aaron, we're sending this in the mail to you this week. You're going to become one of about 30 rabbis who are a part of the exclusive club who have the Bishop and the Rabbi mug. We're going to get it to you this week. So folks, make a donation, join us. We have a mission, and we believe in this mission. After 2,000 years, The state of Israel is reborn. The exiles have been regathered. Jerusalem has been reunited. The capital has been, the embassy has been moved to Jerusalem. And this conversation, which would be unheard of for centuries, what's happening here tonight is a miracle. It hasn't happened in 20 centuries, and it's happening right now here tonight. And you can be a part of it by becoming a partner with us. So, Rabbi, I'm going to bring you to one final difficult question, and I'm sorry, but I want an answer to it. So, one of the things that I've heard many rabbis teach is that most, if not all, of the laws, the Mosaic laws that called for the death penalty, that those were probably, that the oral tradition, which of course Christians don't understand, that there's a massive oral tradition within Judaism that goes right along and tells the story back to very, very, very early sources. And that the oral tradition would say that those death penalty crimes, that death penalty was probably rarely, if ever, carried out, but that the death penalty was spoken in order to make a point about the importance of what was being said, and yet it would be extremely rare, if not perhaps never, carried out. I think I heard that if a Beit Din had been assembled and called for an execution, then that Beit Din, I think, had to, disband after they called for it or something like this. I don't want to go down that road. But here's my question. There is then in the Torah, so we can't ignore it because it's there. There is this story of a man who is gathering sticks on the Shabbat. And as he's gathering sticks on the Shabbat, and it says that this death penalty was applied to him. So we are in chapter 15 and verse 32. Chapter 15 and verse 32. And so, Rabbi, if the oral tradition is such that it says that the death penalty is rarely, if ever, applied, and if there are so many sins that one could imagine that are so much greater than gathering a few sticks, why would this particular, punishment have been meted out and been recorded in the scripture? And I'm really sorry for putting you on the spot like this.
Oh, good. Don't worry.
I should have emailed you ahead of time about this question.
So a few things. One, to answer the question specifically, the biblical text doesn't give us any hints as to why that one is plucked out in terms of all the other ones. Rabbinic imagination and legend comes in to tell us that this was meant to teach us, because he was gathering the sticks to help in the building of the portable tabernacle that the Israelites used to worship in the desert. And the ancient rabbis say that this is an important lesson, in that when the Sabbath is about to begin, if the portable tabernacle was not completed yet, you can't say to yourself, oh, you know what, we're building it for God, so God will understand, we'll keep building it on the Shabbat and whatever. So what the ancient rabbis were actually trying to interpret this to say is that, the road to hell is often paved with the best of intentions. And the last thing in the world that God wants is people thinking for God. That's not our job. And so that's one of the ideas. The other idea that comes from this is, which you beautifully touched on, Robert, is that Judaism is not a biblical religion. Most of the laws of the Bible are not observed anymore. Judaism is a rabbinic religion, meaning that it emerges from the never-ending regenerative activity of human beings to tease out and understand what God's call for us is every moment of our lives. That's the story of rabbinic Judaism. And I would also say it's also the story of Christianity too. The never-ending work of re-understanding, because God doesn't really have a voice per se. We have to work really hard at hearing something that isn't so obvious. But that's where the beauty of it is found.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Incredible. And that first explanation you gave is amazing. And so much instructive to us that we have to be careful, even as we're doing God's work, even as we're doing good deeds, that we keep the acknowledgement of his presence and don't think for God. Well, folks, we could go on all night long. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I don't usually talk this much, Rabbi. I'm sorry, but you just got me stirred up. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful night. And Rabbi, your mug is on the way to you. And we're going to get it up there to you, the bishop and the rabbi mug. And we have so been honored. Now, Rabbi, I know people are going to want to keep in touch with you. They're going to want to hear your sermons. They're going to want to hear your, how do they find you on social media and other places?
Really simple. So on Twitter, it's at Rabbi Flanzraich. Easier, perhaps, is I have the weekly podcast of my sermon from the previous Shabbat, the previous Sabbath. If you go on podcast on your iPhone and type in my name, pop, or you can go online to SoundCloud and it's all there. Also on YouTube, we have a video broadcast of our Shabbat services edited down to my sermons. Just type in Beth Shalom Synagogue Toronto and it's all there. Apparently, if you're having trouble sleeping, it's an excellent tonic for that. But Robert, I just want to say I really so enjoyed spending this time with you. You do really special work, and I pray that God continues to bless you with strength and health. And you should have only happiness in what you do.
Rabbi, thank you so much. It's been a joy tonight to make a new friend and a neighbor. You're right over the border in Toronto. So as soon as these borders open up, we look forward to getting to know each other face to face. Can I ask you, Rabbi, would you consider coming back and teaching us again sometime?
Oh, with pleasure. Anytime, please feel free to reach out.
We would be thrilled to have you again. Everybody, it's been a beautiful, beautiful night. What a great night studying together. We'll see you tomorrow night, 6 p.m. We'll do the Shabbat Brachot for 10 minutes at 6 p.m. And then Sunday morning at the Tabernacle, Pastor Joe Green will be bringing the word. So go to thetab.org at 10 a.m. Saturday night, I'll have a Watchman Partners dinner in Telford. Then Sunday morning, I'll be at Hopewell Telford Church. And look forward to seeing all of you. Until we see each other again, keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. God bless you and shalom. God